You have to trust what you're seeing is real because it will create more in your experience if you believe what's happening. Later, you can go verify it all you want. You can interpret it, you can analyze it, you can try to pick all the little pieces of evidence apart. So what you are able to do in trance is you bring the energies of different people that you have in your life and you just put a list of people in. They can be deceased, they can be alive, but you're just asking their energy to come forward. And it's beautiful when they do, especially as the practitioner, like the room changes. I can taste if the person was into smoking. I'm like, oh, did they smoke? They're like, yeah, he died of cigarettes, like he died of lung cancer. But their energy kind of like fills the room and fills the experience. And you ask them, like, what was our pre-incarnation agreement? And part of the process of discovering is direct evidence. And so when we get enough direct evidence, that's when we're making these hypotheses and theories. And so when you experience something like an NDE or a psychedelic trip or hypnosis, a trance, a past life, that's a piece of evidence. That's a piece of direct evidence.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Dr. Katie Larson with us. She specializes in hypnotherapy and also works as a somatic practitioner. So we're going to talk about what that means, but we're also going to dig in a little bit around past life memories that she has and some other conversations that I wanted to bring up. So first of all, thank you so much, Katie, for
It's
coming on
my
the show. I really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, Joe, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I we're taking a little different approach. Generally, I go way back to everyone's childhood. We might come back to that a little bit, but I kind of wanted to go right in today and ask you how this past life memory stuff came up. So
Yeah.
the reason I ask that is because anytime it has come up in previous conversations, some people have done it through hypnotherapy and things like that, and you may
Yeah.
mention that, but other people actually have memories prior to
Yes.
that. So it could be childhood
Yeah.
memories, things like that. I'm just wondering kind of how
Yes.
all this kind of came to be a little bit, just a little background on that.
Definitely. And it's cute because we might not avoid the childhood part in the
Right.
end because it does come from childhood.
Right.
I'm a kid who had childhood past life memories. And what's fascinating about it was I had them all at the same time at various ages, but they would come in snippets and they were different lives. And so when I was young, maybe about 4, 5, 6, 7, I think it stopped around 8, 9, 10, right? So, but like in that little era of childhood where your imagination works, but you can kind of distinguish between a memory and a thing that actually happened and then like a dream. I would have these visions of a lot of different lives. And so I would see myself like as an old lady. Like I remember I even said to my parents, like, I hope I'm not an alcoholic again. And they're like,
Ah,
again?
wow.
Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I was an old lady and I drank a lot. And I'd have memories of like living in like a really damp stone room that felt like a dungeon, that felt probably like from medieval times. The one that was the most frequent that I could probably tell like really long story of soon is I consistently had a vision of me as a little boy skinning rabbits. And so it would be the whole procedure of what would it be like to skin a rabbit. And I was like, like a native person. I had darker skin and I was a little boy and I was always barefoot and I would just skin a rabbit from start to finish. And I would just have this full memory and then it would just go away. And it was interesting because I felt when I was having them that I think a lot of people would describe it this way. They were like thicker. They felt like more multi-layered and dimensional than say if I had seen something on TV or if I had read a
Right.
book and it like it created a vision. It felt as if, oh yeah, yeah, I've done that. And there were a lot of other little ones interspersed throughout there, but yeah, mine always began from a very young age, and then I forgot. I forgot for most of my adolescence and early adulthood.
Okay, that's a good place to start. So what, first of all, you're saying that when you had, and I think some people can attest to this with certain, it's almost like the
Yeah.
same with like there's some dreams that feel light and fluffy and random
Hmm.
neurons firing, and then there's some that are so heavy in weight,
Yeah.
like the memory itself, that it actually
Yeah.
sticks with you. Because some people have recurring
Totally.
dreams too, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, been here. I recognize this dream." Or I
Yes.
wake up the next day and you go, "Oh, I had that dream again," and it's really like
Right.
strong,
Or
you know
they'll be
that
like, you were
feeling.
there, but it wasn't you. Like it was you, but it was like you in a different body. Like those types
Mm.
of dreams, those tend to like kind of now as what I do for a profession of helping other people go into their past lives. Like those kind of are like the little flag of like, no, there's something you're remembering that is from a different life, right? And I
Wow.
say past life in this interview
Hmm.
because chronologically, a lot of them are from, quote, the past. But the more I do my profession, the more I see like we're all kind of living these lives at once, and it's a lot more complicated than we would assume. But the continued part of that story was when I was in my mid 20s, I had a really adorable come to Jesus moment, actually. So I was raised Catholic, but I didn't really gravitate towards the teaching of Catholicism as much as my peers. I had a really challenging relationship with organized religion, but I was on my honeymoon in Spain, and I was in a cathedral, and I was kind of having one of these classic Saturn returns, you're 28, 29, like, what do I want to do with my life? A quarter life crisis moments.
Hmm.
And I was in the church and I was like, yo, God, like, if you're there, send me a sign. Like, what do I do? And I kid you not, I heard so strongly in my right ear, you need to look into your past lives. And I was like, come again? Like we're in a church, Jesus. Like, are you sure? And it was like, you need to look into your past lives. And it was so clear and so bold that when I returned back to the United States, I was living in Chicago at the time. I got my first past life regression from a hypnotherapist who does similar work to what I do now. And it was a life that was in Scotland. I was a man. I saw everything very viscerally. I saw the cobblestone streets. I saw myself as a little boy. I saw the kids on the side, like playing with this, like a hoop and a wheel type of a thing, like a stick and a hoop type game. I knew where my house was. It was to the left of the clock tower, these types of things. And I saw my marriage to a beautiful woman, my kids. I was a carpenter. I could feel the plane of the wood as I would make it flatter. And it was very visceral and very real. And I saw the entire life and the death. And when I was done with that, my hypnotherapist was like, you're actually really good at this. You might want to consider doing another one called a Life Between Lives session. Now, at that time, I was a scientist. And so in real life, in this Katie life, I was a scientist and a science teacher. And I didn't have a difficult time holding both ideas to be true. I am not a full materialist scientist. I'm more of a phenomenological scientist of like, if there's evidence for it, it's real, right? And so I had some piece of evidence, but I was still like, whoa, let me digest this, please. I really need to let this sink in. So I waited one full year, but as I did for that entire full year, I felt like so many things in my life improved. I felt like I had better empathy. I had more awareness of what I was in on the cosmic joke. I felt like I was more aware of my gifts, my talents. And when I did the Life Between Lives session, I think that's what really changed my life forever.
Wow. So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to mention, so I also had past life regression done.
Mm,
And I also, from the hypnotherapist, was told I was one of his best subjects that he's ever had
yeah,
because of like the way I was able to describe and see and
right.
visualize. It could be, I don't know if it's the artist side of me. I don't really understand.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know
The
why.
sensitive,
Yeah,
highly
but
sensitive people, which we are, if you're a
mhm.
musician, we're good at that.
Right. And I was able to really see and feel and everything. And even
Yeah.
describing names. I've talked about this in a previous show, and you may or may
Mm,
not have heard it because of the subject matter you're into. But what
hmm
had happened was I had gone through a life, and I was a Greek woman,
hmm
really good looking Greek woman. I was
hmm
I say
Yeah,
that because I must have been egotistical about it because I remember looking at myself and being like, wow, I was really like,
right.
I'm hot stuff. And then what happened was I gave them my name. I gave my name. Now, up to
Yeah,
this point, I've loved schooling and stuff. I did pretty well in school. I liked some history, but I knew nothing about Greek history. Like I knew
right.
nothing about Greece, like nothing, zero.
Yeah.
And I gave a name. I gave a name of who I was. And then
hmm
anyway, that evening passed, or I went home, and I couldn't get her name out of my head. And so when I
Yeah.
went home, I Googled the name. And
Wow.
this is going back, Google had just, I mean, it's not that long ago, but it was a good 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, when it was still
Yeah, it
regular
was still
Google,
kind of
not
new. It
AI
wasn't like
Google.
AI
Yeah.
and you could
Yeah,
find things
just
in
click
three
through the
seconds.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah, like so
hmm
I Googled a name and it came up that it was one of the top three names in Greece during the
Wow.
exact time period that I mentioned during
Yeah,
the hypnotherapy session.
I believe it.
And so I wrote to the hypnotherapist, and I expected him to say something like, "Oh, of course, yeah." It was almost like, "Yeah, of course." He wrote back and
Hmm.
he said, "Wow." He was shut. He was like, going to be honest with you, I'm one of the ones who I do this work, but I'm still a skeptic. I'm still
Yeah,
trying to figure out whether this just is our brains making things up,
right.
whether this
A
is,
metaphor.
yeah, he didn't
Hmm.
come from it from a spiritual angle. He came from it from a very scientific, uh,
Yeah,
common doctor thought.
totally
And so he said, but things like this
make you.
give me a moment
Hmm.
of question. It gives him
Totally.
those moments of how did he do that? Like, where did that come from?
Right.
Where is he pulling that information from? And I only
Mm,
bring it up because that was deep,
yeah,
detailed information. And in the work that you do, I'm assuming you probably see that sometimes where
yeah,
it's hard to, if you want to have the logical brain come online and say, well, this is why, it
right.
becomes difficult. Is that fair to say?
I love that you have that experience because it makes you even believe it from the perspective of, okay, there's so much more to this than I anticipated. Because I like the metaphor concept too. Like I like, how that guy was coming from of like, okay, maybe I am just creating a character and it has a metaphor for like a lesson that I'm learning as Katie in this life. And that character was just created by my mind. I'm okay with that
Right.
idea. But what you're describing and what I have also experienced and my clients have experienced is, well, then where's this evidence from? Because this is, there's so much research. I think there's quite a few researchers out there that mostly do it with kids, right? Where kids will say, like, oh, I was killed by this person at this time. I think Dr. Ian Stevenson has a lot of work on this about kids in India that were like describing, oh, this guy killed me and he did it with this murder weapon. And, and then they go and they find it and they find the guy and he like admits to it or whatever. So it's like there is evidence that we have to make amends with as a culture. And that's what's fun. That's what I love about my job.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
what I will say, because and again, one of the angles I come from, even on this show, talking to people with near-death experiences all the time and everything is,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a high believer in things, and I probably become more of a believer talking to people if I'm being honest,
Yeah.
more than when I started the show. But I've always saw
Yeah.
myself as right down the middle because I
Sure.
really like
Helpful.
facts and I'm a truth seeker. So
Same.
I pull from both angles. As much as people
Same.
think, oh, here's another fluffy guy behind under a tree singing Kumbaya and talking to spiritual
Yeah.
people, I'm not like that. Like I'm a spiritual person,
Right.
and I've had experiences in my life that is hard to explain, but I still
Yeah.
come at it from a, I don't know if the word
I think
dogmatic
that's
or from a,
healthy though.
yeah, from a place of
Yeah.
understanding more than just belief only.
I
And
agree. My dad used to say when I was a kid, trust but verify, trust but verify.
mm,
So it's like, especially when you're actually in on the sofa doing this work, you have to trust what you're seeing is real because it will create more in your experience if you believe what's happening. Now, later, you can go verify it all you want. You can interpret it, you can analyze it, you can try to pick all the little pieces of evidence apart. And, for me personally, I have had that happen, and that's remarkable. Like I have a story from I was telling you beforehand about Canada that involves the rabbit that I just told you about from my childhood.
okay.
And that was, I love this story so much because it has three parts, and each part gets like more mind blowing.
Mhm.
And if you don't mind, I can share that because those pieces of evidence were remarkable for me, even for me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, what I experienced as a kid was these nonstop. That's the thing. It's like I couldn't get it out of my mind. The fact that I was skinning a rabbit, skinning a rabbit, skinning a rabbit over and over and over again. Now, something that didn't correspond with the memory, but was a habit of mine as a small kid, a real in Katie's life, was I used to make these huts out of trees. So it would be like a big tree that was in my backyard, and I would take thick branches and I would lay them across the tree, and then I would take smaller sticks and put them in between the branches, and I would go and I'd like live in there. And while I was doing that, that's when I would have these memories of the rabbits. And so there was a connection there. So like in real life, I would make something I called a hut, and then I'd have the memories of the rabbits. So that was a real thing that happened to me often as a child. Fast forward to 2021. And I had a friend who lives in Vancouver Island. So she lives in Victoria in Canada. And she invited me to Victoria. And she kept saying, like, I think you guys would love it. It fits your personality. There's something about it that's really like drawing. I just think you guys need to come visit. And sure enough, when I landed in Victoria, I felt like, oh, this is very familiar. Like I have definitely been here before. And some of the things that were calling to me where I've always had a very strong attraction to almost all Pacific cultures. So South Pacific, North Pacific, Pacific Northwest, everything you can think. I have a very strong pull towards the Pacific. We could go into that later about maybe why that is. But it was mostly the imagery of all of the different totems and things around the city and in the area of Vancouver Island that I felt really attracted to. But what was the weirdest part was when I checked into my Airbnb, over the master bed was a framed shadow box of a rabbit skin. And I looked at it and I got goosebumps and I go, are you f***ing kidding me with this? And so I was like freaking out. And so I texted the owner, hey, what's the story with this rabbit skin? And she writes back and she's like, oh, isn't it great? I just got it. I hope you don't mind. I just put it up. So I'm like,
Wow.
that's weird, right? So for me, that was like a little bit of a wink, wink, nod, nod. Here's some kind of evidence that perhaps this is the life that you lived here, right? So that
Mm.
was 2021. So I just kind of use that as like a weird, oh, funny, like maybe that's just a coincidence kind of a thing. But in 2020, I guess it was this summer. So what is this, 2025? So just this summer, I returned. I returned and I didn't do hypnotherapy to get this memory, but I did something else called brain training, which is just fascinating, where they use electrodes to electronically assist you to get into the theta state. And so that was amazing because what I do is I get people into the theta state through hypnosis, right? And so it takes a little while to get there. You start in alpha and then you go up into theta, which is the very deep, deep state of consciousness where everything is available for you and you can go to your higher self, you can go to these other lives. It's amazing. That's the state you want to be in, the theta state. So I did this electrode assisted brain training and the facilitator was like, everybody's different. You could get this, you could get that. Some people go to other lives, some people have this, da, da, da. So as someone who knows how to access past lives, I said, as an intention, I said, I want to see the life I have on this island, because
Mm.
I felt like I had lived there before. And suddenly I'm back in the rabbit. I'm back in skinning the rabbits and I'm a First Nations little boy, and I'm skinning rabbits, and it's everything that you can think of is needed for that, right? Like the wooden pole that you have to hang the rabbit on when it's done, the wash up area, everything like that. And so it shows me what's interesting about these visions is like you can't fast forward them.
Mhm.
Because you're like, come on with this, like enough. But it's like consistently showing me all the kills that I've had. So I'm like a hunting teenage boy, and I have to
Mhm.
hunt and do all of these things. And that was kind of my role in the community. And then I was like, come on with this, and it won't let you. It's like, no, you got to see this whole entirety of the thing. And so it shows like progressively more and more successful kills of different animals. And then I'm starting to feel proud, right? Because Katie, me, I don't want to hunt. But Katie is this boy was like, and then I killed this, and then I killed that, right? And it was pre-colonial times because it was, very still in the traditional ways of I had a rite of passage where I had to go away with my best friend. And at the time in the vision, the best friend's energy was who is my son now. You recognize their energies. And so I was
Mhm.
like, oh, it's my son. But he and I went off away from the community and I had to shoot, or not shoot, like bow and arrow, but I had to kill a fox. And so once I found the fox a few days in, we brought it back and we had this big celebration at the bonfire. And through the fire's embers, like a log fell, and it was like all of these beautiful little sparkles of that nice, like, when the log like creates those embers. I saw this beautiful woman, and we were teenagers, but her energy was who my husband is now, right? And
Mm.
I see this energy, and the rest of like the part of the memory became a love story. of me courting this woman and like doing a little dance and trying to like, I was trying to be like a hawk, like a falcon instead of like an eagle. I was like, this is how they dance. And it was like me and my courtship. And then it consistently showed more and more things that I killed. Like I was really into hunting. And then it showed that I invented a salmon trap. And this was a really big, and I couldn't fast forward this either because it wanted to show me, and this is how you make the salmon trap. It's a cylinder, and the salmon go in like this. And again, Katie is me. I know nothing about salmon traps, but it was like, and then you tie it here, and then you put it into the water, and then the fish gets stuck, and it was very, very intricate, this memory of it. And I kept asking, like, where is this? And it would say, Tillicum, Tillicum, you're in Tillicum. Now, I knew nothing about Vancouver Island yet, right? So I'm just allowing all of these memories to return to me. It went through the entire life where, I had kids and I had to train my son to be a hunter. I had a daughter, like what happened with my parents dying, et cetera, et cetera. And it was actually a very wholesome, beautiful, loving memory. And it went through the entire life until I died of old age. And when I came to, and I was crying a lot because it was so beautiful, actually. It was a beautiful life. And it was characters from my life now that were in there as interspersed as different characters that I have, yeah, in that life. And when I came to, the woman was asking me details, and I go, is Tillicum a place in Vancouver Island? And she's like, yeah, it's just over the ridge. It's got that river. And she's like, you were there yesterday. Don't you remember? That's Tillicum. And sure enough, it was like I was on the river that this Tillicum area is. And
Wow.
so, of course, like you, I Google, these salmon traps. And like, sure enough, these salmon traps were designed in this area of British Columbia pre-colonial times.
Hmm.
And it's like, you can't make this up. And it was the exact shape and design of these salmon traps of like, where they come from. And I was like, this is unreal, right?
Right.
Where
Right.
you feel, because I felt at home, but I didn't feel at home in Victoria. I felt more at home further in, which is like Tillicum, and you feel resonant with imagery.
Mhm.
And I don't have any memory or care at all about salmon traps, but it's like when they come back and then you go and you see the imagery online, you're like, yep, that's the one. That's part of history now.
Hmm.
So there's no
Wow.
name, right? There's no name that was involved. Like there was maybe like, nicknames and stuff like that. But it's like that's pretty good evidence,
Oh,
of
absolutely. And
things.
the
Yeah.
interesting part when you said you felt resonant of like the location, right?
Yeah.
We I've said this in numerous times as well. Like not everybody can relate to this, but there's been met plenty of times where in my life where I've met someone
Yeah.
and almost get taken back because I
Yeah.
recognize them,
Same. I do that a lot.
not them. I
Their
recognize their
soul.
energy.
Yeah.
And
I love that you have
I've
that.
said this before. I remember one time of all places being in a Walmart and
Yeah.
I'm in line at the Walmart and I feel someone looking at me. And I look behind me and there's a woman who's probably close to my age and she's way at the back of the line. And we look at each other and it wasn't like looking at someone like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" It wasn't anything like that.
No.
It was like, "Oh my
Deeper.
God. Wow, it's
Mm.
you." That kind of thing. And
Yes.
she almost like got taken back when I looked at her. You could see that there was kind of like this like weird thing.
I love
And I
that.
went, okay, well, man, I'm having what's going on with me here? Like, snap out of it. So
Yeah.
then I
Love
paid
that.
for my stuff, but I couldn't get her out of my mind. I'm like, who was that again? So I looked back, and I
Mm.
couldn't find her. And I was like, and I had this like
Wow.
heartache. Like, I'm like, who was that? Like, what was that?
Oh,
It was one of the weirdest things ever because it wasn't like an attraction. It was
no, but
a
it's a memory.
it was like seeing your great grandmother. Like that's the only way I can
Yes.
say it. Like someone who's like really important to you. And
Oh
that
my
kind of
gosh,
stuff,
yes.
that's the resonance that like when you said that
Yes.
felt that in the location. I'm like, I think a lot of us get those feelings, and we probably brush it off as, oh, we must just be thinking that person's,
No,
track.
I have that so deeply with certain people. And not only do I get that with certain people, but I can see them as who they were when I know them and knew them. And so I've recently, and the worst part is like if you and I did that together, I'd be like, oh, you were this and I was this, remember? And we might actually be able to like go into trance, figure it out, and then talk about it.
Right.
But sometimes it's people that are like the last person in the world that would ever
Hmm.
believe that. And I had that with somebody recently where I saw we were boyhood friends. We were in a Muslim country and we were little boys and we would play soccer together and we were boyhood friends. And it's like I saw all of that in an instant, right?
Mm.
And his eyes would just bring me to that memory. And it was like I was incapable of seeing him. It was just as this person now, I kept seeing him as the boy that I knew. And so at the time, I was like, okay, is this like my imagination? But when I went up into trance and I was like, what's the life I know? It showed the entire life, right? And so I'm
Right.
like, right, okay. So I'm meant to see this person again. And what do we do with my work now is we do something called soul contracts. And so what you are able to do in trance is you bring the energies of different people that you have in your life. So usually I let people bring about three or four and or three to five. And you just put a list of people in. They can be deceased, they can be alive, but you're just asking their energy to come forward. And it's beautiful when they do, especially as the practitioner, like the room changes. I can taste if the person was into smoking. I'm like, oh, did they smoke? They're like, yeah, he died of cigarettes, like he died of lung cancer. But their energy kind of like fills the room and fills the experience. And you ask them, like, what was our pre-incarnation agreement? And you were supposed to teach me this and I was supposed to teach you that, and then you kind of look at what you guys need, like how are we doing? And oftentimes we're kind of mismatched on what we're meant to be teaching one another, and so then you can actually renegotiate it in these sessions. And what I find absolutely unbelievable is that even though we're just working with the other person's soul
Mhm.
in the experience or their essence or their energy, the relationships change. And so now, like we said before, is like my, rational brain is like, well, it's only changing because the person is thinking, oh, I better approach this other person differently.
Mhm.
But dozens of clients, they'll call back and they'll say, what's crazy is their behavior changed. Their behavior changed. And it's like all we did was this thing in this other realm. But oftentimes we will see if you ask for the origin of the karma. So I'll just give an example. I'll do one from my own life. Like I was meant to, my sister bullied me a lot in this life. In real life, she bullied me a lot, but she was meant to teach me to stand up for myself. And I was meant to teach her compassion. And when we look back, there's like another life that some of that karma is coming from. And so we had unfinished
Mhm.
business, karma from the perspective more of unfinished business, where we didn't learn those lessons in another life. And so we're continuing them in this life. The arc is a lot longer than one lifetime. And so I got to see, oh, it's coming from this other life when we were different characters and we didn't finish the job. So now we have to finish it in this life. And what's nice about knowing our soul contract is instead of saying, you know what, F you really bullied me a lot. I want nothing to do with you. I have a lot more compassion and understanding that her soul had to do that for me, or I wouldn't have stuck up for myself. I'm a very brave and assertive person because as a child, I was bullied, right? So we can see it in a different way. And I think that's what's both amazing in the work that I do and quite challenging is we're constantly toggling between our human body and nervous system and then this very wise spiritual understanding. And sometimes that spiritual understanding can kind of carry us through things like trauma and, emotional things that happen to us. But then sometimes we still have to deal with it in the body. And that's why when you introduced me, the somatic practitioner had to come into my work because hey, you can spiritually bypass all you want and be like, oh, it's for my own growth and like this is good for my soul, but your body's still gonna feel it. So it's
Mhm.
important to understand what to do with that. But yeah, I know I went all over the place with that.
No.
But yes, the soul contracts, when you met that lady, you probably really recognized her.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and again, I use that example because I mean I see people every day. I'm around a lot of people, and
yeah.
this was an individual who was a complete stranger. So to
I
have
wish you
that
would talk to
reaction
her. Yeah.
from a distance too of maybe 20 feet, 30 feet that you're just kind of like, how did, like, what is that? Like, yeah, and I know
Yeah,
people, and some people are like, oh, you just had the hots for each other or something, like maybe like, but it wasn't that. It was a very different feeling. It was a
I agree.
familiar, almost
Yes.
like in a way, like,
Family reunion.
yes,
Mhm.
that's the feeling I had. That
Yeah,
was the feeling.
and so when we do this work, what we learn is we kind of travel in groups. And what I'm learning even more as I do this even longer is that sometimes the souls that we go through in different lives, they kind of have like tiers, meaning like there's a group that we have that's like they're always like your first tier, like meaning they're in your family of origin, they're like a parent or a grandparent or a kid or whatever. They're like the tight knit tier. And then there's like another tier that's like peers. You're like playmates and lovers and colleagues and people that are like in your life, but they're not really significant. They're like supporting characters and they're there. And it's like we kind of travel around with these people a lot. And so sometimes I feel like when we have like a very strange reaction to like somebody that's insignificant in our life, but it's like maybe like a colleague or, you know, just like a friend or something, but not like a deep friend. Oftentimes that reaction that we're having is to another life that we had with them,
Mm,
where like you were best friends and like you were betrayed by them. And
right.
like that like distrust now is like not earned from this lifetime, but it's like coming from another lifetime. But often the ones that are like in that first tier, those we've been around with a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And we recognize them. I recognize my husband at age 10, like in this life. He walked on the school bus. I met him on the school bus. I looked him and I fell in love with him instantly. And I mean, we didn't get married at 10, but we got married at, 28, 29. But I knew him. I knew him at age
Wow.
10. And I remember at 16, I told a friend, I go, he's a soulmate. I remember him. So it's like, I really feel that resonant with what you're saying with this lady. It's like there are times that we feel it. And I feel like it feels like a family reunion of like, oh, I know you. You're my soul
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, with my fiance, I feel the same way. Like there was a familiarity. And with her, it made more sense because this was someone that was coming into my life. Like I was literally
Yeah.
sitting with her doing music, that kind of thing. But when it's someone that's completely like not even, it's almost
Stranger.
like they were just kind of passing by to say hello. That's what it felt like. And they were part
Yeah.
of probably one of these tiers. One of the things that really fascinated me about, going back to like the past, like the, hypnosis and
Yeah.
how I always was trying to kind of decipher the difference. I really wanted to do it, and I remember going into it and saying, "Listen, doesn't matter what I think this is. I had the intention of letting go of all questions about it and just
Good
enjoying the
idea.
experience. And
Yeah.
I encourage anyone that does past life regression or things like that to do that because you can always have your judgment after or your whatever it is that's going to come up
Yeah.
later. But in the moment, it's good to just kind of let it happen and see what. And I'm glad I did that because I had that experience. The only thing that I did question after, and you've kind of just kind of
Hmm.
answered it in your own way, because what I was going to say was, you know, are we actually going into our past or let's say current lives that we're all, because time is different than we actually understand,
Yeah.
right? So are we actually jumping into these lives or is our soul energy jumping into other people's lives? Like, are
Oh, I
we,
like that.
right? Like,
Mm,
are we witnessing almost like a movie or feeling or going in with our energy to other lives? That was the one question
I
I
love
still
that.
don't know if I've totally agreed. Like, because, although I do talk to a lot of NDErs who've
Yeah.
claimed they've been told we have multiple lives.
Yeah.
So, but again, I didn't have that. So I'm just,
Yeah.
it's hearsay.
I
But,
know. This
I've
is
thought
so
about
fun
that.
to talk about. I
Yeah,
love this
and
I
maybe it's
love this
both. I
topic.
don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm curious if you what your feelings are on that. Do you think that are
I have a working hypothesis.
okay? Okay.
So it comes from both my experience personally as a client, my experience as a hypnotherapist with multiple clients, but then also research and the work of Dolores Cannon. So
Mm,
this is a working hypothesis where I'm completely comfortable with somebody being like, you know what? What about this piece of data? And I'll be like, I have to rework all of this. But what I seem to have gathered is I'll use my hand as a tool. So if you're just listening on audio, you could still imagine this, but it's like our soul is our arm. We'll just put it that. We have this higher self soul, right? And it's the combination of every experience and every lifetime and every wisdom and every whatever. And it has these little branches coming off of it as like the fingers. And these are the characters that we want to play. And some people have five, some people have 20, some people have just one, but it's like the soul, right? Some souls have five, 20, etc. But they are putting these little avatars, these little characters into these simulations, into these scenarios in order to get something out of it.
Hmm.
Now, when I'm in a really cool, spiritual, like amazing mood, and I'm like, and the thing they're getting out of it is love and growth and all these things. But then I'm also like, is this a really fucked up experiment that like we're all being farmed for some weird energy that like, you get put into these scenarios and you're being
Right.
farmed? Like it could be just as it could be benevolent or malevolent. I'm not
Right.
sure. But when I'm in a love and light mood, I'm like, no, it's our soul trying to experience the very wide gamut of polarities that exist as a human being. And so, what I think we're picking up on is one right now, you and I are in the thumb, but when you go into trance, you're in the index finger, and then if you go and do another one, you're in the pinky. And so, it's like you can shift through all of these different lives. And
Mhm.
what's even stranger is they seem to be occurring at the same time. Because like time is weird, right? But they seem to all be occurring enough that they're influencing each other. And so it's like that's what's really bizarre is that like there seems to be different dimensions. Like, if we were the soul looking down, the higher self kind of looking down, we can kind of move pieces between lifetimes, of
Wow.
like, oh, she's not getting enough of that humility in this life. We better move it to this next life, and it's more dimensional than I think we're able to humanly understand. But I do feel that it is not like some people used to think in a long time ago of like, so I died in 1981 and then I was born in 1982. And then if I die here in 2025, I'll be born again in 2026. I don't think it's as linear as we
Right.
think. I think we're actually living multiple lives. We might even have a soul at this moment that's living in a different country or a different planet, right? And so that's what's fun too, is like we've got when in
Oh yeah.
trance, you're going in other planets and other dimensions. Sometimes you're a rock for an eon, whatever. But you're doing these things in order to gain some kind of visceral experience that soul can only get through physicality, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my
No,
working
I love no, I
hypothesis.
love the answer. I love it's you still stay within the oversoul idea of that
Oversoul's
we
good.
have a higher self, and then that
Yeah.
higher self, this is what I believe, then it goes even higher, right? Then that higher self is part of the
Yes.
even higher self, which is probably
Yes.
God, source, whatever it is,
Yes. I agree too.
but that
Hmm.
there's this part of us this that has existence that's been created, whether it's energy, because according to many people, if we're energy, well, God split energy, right? And then once the
Yeah.
energy's there, it can't be destroyed. So now that you have this creation, and then that creation has little mini creations within its main
Right.
creation. So it goes real deep. But that's the first time I've ever
Yeah.
had anyone say or talk about the influence on one life to another. That seems very
Right.
fascinating. Um, I think it makes sense if you're looking at it from I hate the word the simulation theory
I
stuff
know.
because it feels
I
so
get
like
you. It's too
cold.
technology.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it's too
yeah,
techno.
but
Yeah.
in a sense, I understand it. Like I understand the idea, and it doesn't
And the
necessarily mean it's
ancients used
bad.
illusion, right? The
Yeah.
ancients used illusion, Maya, right? Like in Hindu culture, it was Maya. It's all an illusion, and they had that nice Indra's net, right? So they had a beautiful idea of a net, and there were little pieces of water or jewels on one part of the net and on all part of the nets. And if you moved some jewel on one part of the net, it influences the other part of the net. It was
Mm,
just like fractals, right? They're just fractals. And
right.
I think that's what's fascinating to me is like we've been a lot of characters, like we've been the villains. We've been the I have one where I was a beggar in India where I wanted to learn humility. And that's what's fun about doing the Life Between Lives sessions. I guess I didn't really chat too much about how that influenced me, but the life between life, if we go back to my story of like, and then I did the past life regression and when I was 28, and then I did the life between lives when I was 29. And one of the things you learn in the life between lives is like, where are we when we're not alive?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? Right. And so one of the things that we are doing is we are consciously choosing experiences to put our souls through. And so you'll learn, you can visualize different lives and you'll learn what your lesson was meant for that life. And so one of the lives that I had was I wanted to be humble. I wanted to learn humility. And so I was a beggar. And then I wanted to learn power. And then I didn't choose to be a human. I chose to be an elephant because I wanted to be really powerful. And then I chose to be rich, but I wanted to be depressed as I wanted to get a lot of money. But I ended up, that was a very depressing life because I wasn't happy, but I had a lot of money, right? And it just continues. You just choose interesting scenarios and combinations of what you want to learn and what you want to experience. And a lot of us do choose to be the villain, to
Mm,
be the perpetrators, not because we are bad, inherently, but because somebody needs it.
mhm.
Sometimes somebody needs that polarity for their growth. And so you're like, okay, I'll be the villain this time, and then you be the villain next time. And so it's like a
Mhm.
game that we're playing. And that's what's fascinating when you do these sessions with people where they find out, oh my God, the person who's bullying me right now in my life, we chose
We
this.
chose that together, or even together. And probably where a lot of people have problems with that is because then we feel like, oh, we're giving them excuses for being the way they are.
It's
Well,
very challenging.
not necessarily. It's just I think if anything that helps with forgiveness and understanding. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
they were that person. Possibly they chose it. Um, Luckily we didn't. They're still learning. It doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah.
It still feels as bad as it is because we're doing
Right.
this, and hopefully they're learning something from it. You can still be upset about it, but at least with
Yeah.
that understanding of what you're saying, it would probably help people release that anger inside, or that understand. You would give them more of an understanding to it. I mean, all dependent on how
Yeah.
bad it is.
I think so. I think what
But
that's again back
difficult.
to the like this is why I include the somatics now is like I understand my own abuse from that perspective now. And I feel like I can very easily spiritually bypass and understand the reason that I was abused as a child. But man, it stays in my nervous system,
Hmm.
like it's still in my body, and that's a pain in the ass. And so we have to make amends with, we do have a spiritual existence. We do. And it's very visceral in our bodies. And so that's why it's important, I think, for anybody that's playing around in these realms, whether it's using psychedelics, using hypnosis, using meditation, that you do have a really firm grasp on the way that it's going to influence your body because we can't get out of these meat suits, like we
Right.
can go and visit these amazing ethereal realms, but you got to come back to the meat suit. And so
Mhm.
we need to understand the way that these experiences are influencing us. And so that's what I do also help people with is like, okay, now that we've explored this, how can we also, find how that's living in our body and the fascia and in the muscles and kind of
Mm.
move and actually allow it out of our bodies so that we don't hold on to some of the traumas that our soul may have chosen to give us.
And that's so I love how you described that, and that's the somatic work, right? That's the moving the
Yeah.
energy around. Um,
Yeah.
so this is all fascinating stuff. I just have a few quick questions here to ask
Please. I
you.
love these
One of
conversations.
them, I know, and that's why it's too bad we have such tight time. Maybe we can have you back again sometime.
I'd love
But
to.
I really, I'm curious about this one only because, so I didn't mention this, but I'm certified in hypnotherapy. I did
Oh, wow.
some certifications. I just have to do the work in order to.
Yeah.
I'm the
The
type of person that
clients.
I want to do work before I am like, oh, this is what I do. I'm a bit of a perfectionist
I'll
that
be
way.
your
So,
guinea pig. I'm happy to be your guinea pig.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm getting into that stage because I've always been fascinated, obviously, with the afterlife and all these things.
Yeah.
So that's why listening to everything without even knowing that about me, it was pretty
I
fascinating.
love that.
That because I'm curious. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I'd probably find this as I'm in the work eventually, do you ever get non-believers or people who are completely like, this is silly, that actually end up having an experience themselves and are
Yeah.
kind of like dumbfounded once they're out of it? Do you ever get
I
that?
have a great one. I have a great one because I have to do her accent because she's my favorite one of this.
Hmm.
She had all of these really interesting memories that were coming up, and she was this really, middle-aged Texan woman, and she was, I grew up with Jesus, so I'm not sure I really want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm having these strange memories. And what's so fascinating was she had this very thick Texas accent in reality. And then when she went up into her higher self and this experience in this other life, in this particular life, she was actually just energy. Her voice completely changed. She was speaking in ways that were like as if it were channeled, right? And she had an experience where she was actually from a planet where they're all disembodied, they're only energies having an energetic experience. But an embodied species came into their planet and was like almost colonizing these energies. And so one of the things that they had tried was to send all of these souls into planets where you have a body in order to understand what it feels like to be embodied. And then at night, they're gaining this information and they're sending it back to their home planet. Now, this woman was not at all
Wow.
someone that's like, she goes, I don't read things like this. I don't watch TV. Like, I don't have anything, but it was just coming out of her as if it was as clear as day. And so it reminded me of the work of Dolores Cannon, where she would put people into trance and they're describing these very interesting other universes. And, I'm here on this planet as a visitor because I'm supposed to be doing a purpose and a work. And I think that was probably my favorite example of someone where she went from
Mm.
totally skeptical to a believer overnight. And then she was actually really accepting of when I'm having these dreams, it's because they're gaining the information from my life as an embodied human and giving it to this other species on a different planet, and it's helping them. Now, even me as a scientist and skeptic was like, are you fucking kidding me with this? But this woman was just, you cannot fake this, right?
Mm.
Her voice changed.
Wow.
She was so specific about exactly what was happening. And when she came out of trance, she's like, well, I'll tell you, I did not expect that.
Yeah, I bet. If she had more of a religious backing to it
Very,
too. I mean, a
very
lot of people
religious.
don't have any a lot of I'm not saying I'm not putting words in her mouth, but a lot of people like that don't feel there's anything beyond us. So like that would have
Yeah.
been quite a surprise, that
She was shocked. And so some
yeah.
of it sometimes too, when I work with my clients now, is allowing you to integrate that, right? Because it's like, how do you make amends with that
Hmm.
when your entire life and you're in your midlife was Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior? Okay, awesome. But now we have this new piece of phenomenological evidence that you have to make amends with, direct experience. And I think that's what's so important that we've really come away from. And if I could give anything to people that, are listening to this and you're a little bit skeptical, is that I used to be a science teacher. I think I mentioned that, but when you took science in high school, maybe in university, you were just learning what has been discovered. But really, science is the process of discovering. It's a verb, it's an action, and part of the process of discovering is direct evidence. And so when we get enough direct evidence, that's when we're making these hypotheses and theories. And so when you experience something like an NDE or a psychedelic trip or hypnosis, a trance, a past life, that's a piece of evidence. That's a piece of direct evidence. And it's important for us to take that as a real thing and make meaning about it. You can make meaning about what consciousness is, about what life is, about reality is, or you can make meaning about what your purpose is. What
Mm.
is the meaning of life? Like and any depth that you want. But it's a real experience. So it's really worth treating it that way.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's so funny that I get this all the time on my show. People always say things right before I'm about to ask it. And it's the final question I have to ask you. I mean, first of all, I want to know if you can mention it before you answer this question, how people get in touch with you. So I don't know if you have
Yeah.
a website or anything like that. I'd like to get
Yeah,
the
I'll share
contact
that.
information of all the guests, because it's been amazing. And I definitely, I
It's
would
my
love to connect
pleasure.
again. But I always ask, what have you, I mean, you keep continuing doing the work you're doing, but if you were to sum up why we come and do this,
I
jump
know.
into this meat suit. What is our main, what is the purpose if there's so much beauty and everything else where, because I see that a lot in the NDEs that we're really amazing. Like we're very
I
powerful
know.
beings. Why would we come and put ourselves in this heavy suit with different ailments and run around and try to make
Yes.
sense of it.
I
So
love
first
his
of all, I gotta get the
questions.
information
I
on
want,
you.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yes,
Yeah.
I think let's do a sequel to this because these are such
Absolutely.
great questions. I love your interview style. Okay, so my website is Growth Quests. So it's plural, Growth Quests. So it's like you're growing and you're on a quest, growthquests.com. And my handle on Instagram is at drkatiegrowthquests. And oh my gosh, I have so many funny ways to answer this question. I'll give two joke ones and then I'll do a serious one. So I had one client one that asked her higher self, why did I choose to be born this time? And the higher self was making a joke. And they were like, "Oh, you love strawberries." Like
Ah, wow.
you're really into eating strawberries and you just wanted one more time to come down to earth and have a strawberry. And I was laughing because at her afterwards, I was like, you know what? I do like orgasms. Like, I could see why I would come down. Like as a human, you're like, well, those were great, like I'd like
Yeah,
to
let's do it
have those
again.
again. Yeah. But I think for me, my working hypothesis of why we do it is imagine you have to be on a desert island for the rest of your life. Are you just going to sit in the sun all day and enjoy this paradise? No. Like you're going to read books, you're going to want films, and you're not only going to watch comedies, you're going to have dramas and thrillers, and you're going to have, absurd like indie films and things like that. There's something that we have as a soul that desires to feel alive in every possible way. And it isn't as, in my opinion, I don't actually think it's always to be good. I think being good is a good thing for our soul, but actually it's to experience pain and heartbreak and grief and drama and thrills. It is to live the films that we create as humans in real life. It's to feel the sensations that we really try sometimes to protect ourselves as humans from now. I think we're quite sanitary and sterile as humans, but
Mhm.
really, I think deep down, our soul loves a good drama and a good sword fight and a good, like, unrequited love story. Oh,
Mhm.
love that. And I think it's almost an entertainment value, more so than just to grow. Like I think the growth, like my business is called Growth Quests because I think really the meaning of life is to grow. But to grow, we got to do all these crazy things,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes they feel good and sometimes they don't, but your soul loves it.
Wow. I love that. And I love the meaning of life is to grow.
Yeah.
No one's ever said that. So it makes sense. But also you're right. It's the drama and the feel. It's everything, right? So
Yeah.
everything resonates with me. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you
Oh, it's my
so much.
pleasure.
I really hope that people listening really got something out of it. I always reach out to the audience and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired so I can keep getting
Please.
amazing guests like Katie on. And if you feel that this resonated with you, either reach out to Katie or share it with somebody. But thank you so much for coming on Soul
Thank
Inspired.
you,
Really
Joe.
appreciate it.
My
Thank you so much.
pleasure.
So